And now, it's Ultimate Combat Radio with your host, Mike Stidham on 1280 and 97.5. The Zone, brought to you by Aztec Highway, WDFA.
Welcome to Ultimate Combat Radio, Utah's only all MMA radio show. Mike Stidham here, talking a little mixed martial arts. And, of course, this show is brought to you by Aztec Highway. It's Friday, 12/16/11. Got no time to chit-chat, Joe. We got way too much stuff, way too much awesome stuff going on tonight. We got 4 guests lined up for you, and it's only an hour-long show, so we've got to cram a lot of things in here. And all of them are very significant guests. In studio with us, former Mr. Utah, current Mr. Pretty Dang Cool, doing a lot of really neat stuff, and half of the first MMA fight ever to take place within the borders of Utah, Mr. Lance Batchelor. Lance, how are you, man?
Great. It's great to be here.
Welcome to the program, and we're going to skip over some other things here, but I want you to feel free to chime in on anything we talk about tonight.
Okay, great.
All right, good stuff.
Feel free to exhale, too.
Yeah, he's got muscles. So radio doesn't do justice to the biceps that Lance Batchelor has. Used to be Mr. Utah. In fact, he probably still could be Mr. Utah. It's a pretty, he makes me look not so good. All right, next segment, we're going to be speaking with not one but 2 participants in the upcoming WCFC Last Man Standing event taking place January 20th at UVU in Orem. Fabiano Scherner. According to his Wikipedia page, he's a German-Brazilian mixed martial artist and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He competes in the heavyweight division. He's fought in Cage Rage, IFL, and the UFC. He's a world Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion, 6-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu national champion, 2-time US BJJ champion, and world no-gi BJJ champion. Fighting right here in Utah. So he's got a pedigree, to say the very least. Now, also going to be joining us on the program is another guy in the same tournament, Jack May. Now, Jack doesn't have the same pedigree, but Brandon, you and I got a chance to watch this guy work some pads, and we got a chance to see this kid work. He's the best heavyweight prospect I've seen ever, and I think he matches up to what I'm reading about Fabiano Scherner. Jack May, good-looking kid.
Yeah, going up against really good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is nothing new to the Eric Paulson camp.
Right, he's an Eric Paulson guy. So Brandon, obviously he's got some strong connections with Eric Paulson and their crew. So looking forward to Brandon helping us shed some light on what's going on with Jack May. This is shaping up to be what is going to be an awesome tournament, and we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Now, as if that were not enough, UFC's Johnny Hendricks will be joining us on the program as well to discuss his upcoming bout against John Fitch in UFC 141, and of course the great white Joe Martinez will be will be interviewing him for us and shedding some light on what he's going through, going up against who is really the number 2 welterweight in the world.
Who you think is going to be the next welterweight champion?
I think so, man. I'm just telling you, GSP's injured, and you just don't come back from ACL injury the same.
And all these guys are ready to pounce on that title too.
Right,
He's out of the way.
All right, so now I regret to inform some of our listeners that we're not going to get to the poll question this week because we did kind of hype it up on Facebook a little bit this week, and so much to the chagrin of the dozens of people who've been calling and emailing, excited about this thing, who felt that that we had a little bit of a heated exchange between myself and a local manager / promoter, and I want to kind of back off a little bit because take some of the emotion out of it, and maybe we can talk Kevin into coming in onto the show next week, either Kevin or Pat or even both of them, and if they've got a legitimate enterprise, or they've got something that I'm missing here as far as why fighters need managers that are promoters, then I would love to hear from them. So this topic is worth discussing at length, and I don't want to do it a disservice, and I certainly don't want to do a disservice to Lance and some of the other guys. So I'm very humbly asking Kevin and Pat, and maybe you guys can pass on the message since he's not talking to me.
and everybody knows that you're a realist. If somebody can prove it to you, you'll believe in it.
I'll be honest with you. If you can show me, I'll sign up tomorrow. In fact, you can represent me in the negotiations to fight Johnny Ritchie. I'm all about it, man. So
is that going to happen before or after your Ultimate Fighter trials?
I will have to ask Steel Fist Management what I'm going to do. I have to refer all of my questions to them. All right, so feel free to weigh in this week on Facebook. We'd love to have your opinion. We're not going to talk about it tonight. We've said as much as we're going to say about it right there. Now, every week we have a badass of the week, and Joe, come on, man, your submission. I
asked you if you had one.
I got to bust your chops on it a little bit because Joe wanted to nominate the cop that held the girl's hand under the bus. She was run over by a bus, and he reached under
and checked her legs.
He checked her pulse, and she said, "Don't leave me," and so he held her hand until the ambulance got there. Well, who wouldn't do that?
I know, but
Joe,
he did do it,
and
though.
why is it remarkable that a cop did something nice?
Do you have something better?
Yes, I do.
That's all I asked you. I asked you if you had a badass of the week.
All right.
You didn't respond.
I had to bust your chops about it because it's not going to happen. All right, so my badass of the week is Lance Batchelor. I'm going to tell you why. 20 years ago, he was in the first MMA match in the state of Utah, and you think when you think of that, you think, in fact, the way he was painted was this knuckle dragon bouncer dude that just was a marauder, and he's completely the opposite of that. And we kind of retouched with each other on Facebook, and he invited me up to his work. And he works at the University of Utah in a laboratory that does research for children's leukemia. And so, I mean, that's pretty cool, right? Well, the day I go there, they're working on submitting a paper to he's literally curing cancer. We talk about that all the time. He's not curing cancer. Well, he does. And I want to, Lance, maybe could you quickly just kind of describe what it is that you do, that paper that was submitted? How cool is it?
Oh, it's the greatest. We've been working on it for years, but we found, so most chemotherapeutic drugs kill any cells, cancer cells, but also cells that are dividing. You lose your hair, your taste buds, all that. Well, we've come across, using a screen that we've developed, we came across a drug that kills just T cells, which is what the cells that are leukemic, and it kills only leukemic T cells. So not even the normal T cells die from this, and it doesn't touch other types of cells. So this is like the next two-generation leap.
Badass
in
of the century right there. And if you've had anybody in your life that's been afflicted with cancer, leukemia specifically, what a great breakthrough. I mean, it's just, to me, it's so awesome. And I was so privileged that, Lance spent 3.5 hours taking me on a tour of the place and really showing me the inner workings of what happened there. And so I was so touched by it and so impressed by it. So awesome. Kudos
Thank
to you.
you.
Badass of the week, my man. And everybody else up there. So give them a lot of love from us.
That's incredible.
All right, good stuff. So now this segment is brought to you by Ultimate Combat Training Center and Mushin Self-Defense. I don't want to forget about that. I've got to tell you, I'm really excited about some of the guys that are at the gym right now. We've got some really, really tough kids that are coming out of there. Eric Wallen, a kid, is just putting his time in. Watch out for this kid. And some of the guys that we got in there during the daytime training sessions. I'm excited about it, Brandon. I'm really excited that we're maybe going to be able to get in and compete with the Mushin guys again.
Awesome. So I take it you're talking MMA here, or I know you have wrestling programs.
Well, we're not curing
programs.
Cancer out there, if that's what your question is. But yeah, it's mixed martial arts. And we've got some guys that are looking just really good. And as I said, when you think of Eric Wallen, if you've seen him fight, he's a wrestler. He's a 2-time state wrestling champion. So you think, this kid's a pretty good wrestler. His hands are getting ridiculously good, and so are his kicks. So I'm excited.
We don't want that.
I'm just telling you, man, he's going to be awesome. So I'm excited about it.
Kiser knows Wallen. He knocked out one of his guys.
I know, man. So we're excited about it. But I know that, the Mushin guys always have tough guys up there. So if you're interested in getting involved with the Ultimate Combat Training Center, stop by. We're inside the VF Factory Outlet Mall in Draper. And then, of course, Mushin is up there in North Salt Lake. And how do they find you?
You always make a joke about this, but 10 guys come into the gym a week, and I always ask them how they found us, and they say, I just Googled MMA in North Salt Lake and Mushin, and it just came right up. So I doubt anybody will remember a phone number over the radio, so I'm just going to say Google us on the interweb, and we'll get you in there.
All right, very good. So let's talk about Lance Batchelor. We got him here for a reason. He's not just here to accept his Badass of the Week award. We're going to talk, and this segment might go just a little long, just so our producer knows. Lance, you were involved in the first MMA fight. And before we start talking about this, I want to preface things with the fact that the guy that you fought, his name is Pedro Sauer, and he has been the most gracious supporter of me and my show, and his sidekick at the time, Lonnie Foster, ended up being my best friend for years. He sadly passed away last year. And so I really want to preface what we're talking about here with, we mean no disrespect to anybody, and we don't want to besmirch anybody's name, but it was such a great story. And, and Joe, I want you to kind of test this. my jiu-jitsu instructor and a pretty close friend, Dave Johnson, I brought this topic up last night, and he flat out called me a liar, started yelling at me. He's very emotional about it.
Oh, it got heated. I thought there was going to be a fist fight over it.
Because people have some very deep-seated emotions attached to what happened here. So we're going to walk through this very gently. Because, again, there were some things that happened back then, and it was all in the mindset of the time. You have to realize that, when the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu first came out, it was right after UFC 1 that this all transpired, and they had something to prove. And so, Lance, you said some things before we came on the air that the mindset that was going on there and what they felt they had to do. And I'd love to have you just repeat that.
Well, what was going on was the Gracies had this ingenious marketing campaign. It was, and they were saying basically their talking points were street fights go to the ground. We're the best on the ground. Therefore, we're it. And they were doing the Gracie Challenge at the time, and they would take people like, if you're a kickboxer or whatever, if they hurt them, they would go challenge them and say, we're better. And
so how this all started, I forgot to mention this because I did want to mention this, that Pedro, what he's been able to accomplish since then, and I should say Professor Sauer, in all due respect. You think of the Ricky Lundells of the world and what they've done, what he's accomplished, and what Will Bernalis and some of these Pedro disciples have done. I don't want to discount anything that he's done. So
yes, I don't want to.
His contribution to MMA has been phenomenal.
Yeah,
so
and I agree with you 100%.
Right.
This is in no way to put down Pedro at all.
You guys know me. I'm not trying to sugarcoat stuff that doesn't need to be sugarcoated. I really, out of respect, I think needed to be sugarcoated a little bit. So what happened was I used to compete in kickboxing, and I was going to go fight in a kickboxing match out of town. And so a friend of mine who's a DJ on K-Bear, I think we can say that. Anyway, I went on the air, and they talked to me about my kickboxing match. And at the end of the conversation, I left, and they got a phone call. And they got a phone call from a guy named Kazika Munoz. Yeah. And he was with Pedro Sauer, and they said, we will destroy a guy like him. We take a kickboxer. We have defeated several black belts, and we'll beat him up, basically. And so, of course, the DJ, he's thinking he's a promoter kind of guy. He says, hey, well, why don't you guys come in tomorrow, and you can talk all about it. It just so happened, ironically, that Lance, a good friend of mine, he was competing for Mr. Utah. So they had him in there, just completely unrelated, and he was sitting there. He was supposed to be in the segment after the jiu-jitsu guys spoke. So the jiu-jitsu guys come in, and they start saying, oh, yes, Mike's, what he does is no good, and we would destroy him, and so on. And Lance is sitting there, and he goes, hey, man, the guy's not even here. What do you want to badmouth him for? He can't defend himself. And they turn around and looked at him, and he goes, we would destroy those big muscles there, man. You're a big bodybuilder. We would beat you. So maybe you could help relay that conversation.
Yeah, so they're just start to challenge me, and I was feeling I'm very loyal, and I had great respect for Mike, and so I'm like, sure, it's an emotional decision. I say, yeah, let's go, we'll do it. But then, of course, I had one little problem. I had never fought before. In fact, I had no formal training, and Pedro is a professional, awesome fighter, and he has shown that over the years. And I, 20 years experience at the time, I believe. I didn't have 20 minutes.
So, but Lance felt he had to stick up for me, which I feel bad about this looking back. But I leave, I go on my fight, I come back, have my fight, I come back, and my mother dies. My mother passes away while I'm gone, so I come back, and so I just kind of removed myself from everything for a week. And I didn't realize this entire week, my DJ friend is pumping up this fight, man. You guys got to come check it out Friday. It was during the day. They did it at my gym. And because I asked this guy, he's a friend of mine, and he was one of my brown belts, and I said, can you keep an eye on the gym this week? Well, he didn't tell me that he was promoting the biggest fight of the century. So I just happened to be driving by, and I see all these cars out front, and I go in, and there are 300 people in my gym. And I go, what the heck's going on here? And they had Pedro fighting Lance, and I said, no way, man, I'm not going to let this happen. Lance doesn't know how to fight. Lance
and Bill Colbert let this happen?
Yeah, Bill Colbert's probably rolling over in his bed right now. This story's probably killing him. God forbid. Well, so at any rate, I go to the guy who was seemed like he was the ringleader. His name was Lonnie Foster, and I said, Lonnie, I've got really serious liability issues here. I can't let this fight happen. He goes, well, they've already agreed to it. And I turned to Lance. I said, Lance, you're not going to do this. He goes, you looked at me dead in the eyes. I said, Mike, I'm fighting him. I don't care what you say. I'm fighting this guy. So I'm like, okay, well, I've got liability issues. If it goes near the crowd, I need it stopped. And Lonnie says, no, we're not going to stop this unless he's taps or he's unconscious. And I go, Lance says, that's what I want to do. I said, okay, well, Lance didn't even know what tap meant. You know what I mean? He thought he tap dancing. I don't know. But they go on, and they're going to have the fight. And it looks like we're going to have to take a break. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to finish this story. And plus, we've got, lots of interviews to do with Jack Scherner or Jack May, rather, and Fabiano Scherner. So you're going to want to stick around for this. Don't go anywhere.